Hey guys, before we start, a quick shout out to Alpha Dog Nutrition for sponsoring this podcast. Alpha Dog products are now available at dusupply.com, and you can use code ALPHADOG15 at checkout for 15% off and a credit for free shipping to try it yourself. Now let's get you to your podcast.
Where's Fielder? He's gone to the dogs.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gone to the Dogs podcast. I'm your co-host, Corey Groover, back from a long hiatus, and sitting here in the studio with me is the man with the PhD in podcasting, Mr. Steve Fielder. Steve, how the heck are you, man? Feel like I haven't talked to you in a coon's age.
I tell you, Corey, I'd be lying if I told you I was good.
No, man. What's going on?
Oh, man. I thought about us recording this podcast this week, and I thought, now, Steve, the one thing you don't want to do is to make this thing sound like a couple of old dudes sitting out on the front porch in a rocker talking about their ailments. So I'm going to try my best to stay away from all that. I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version.
Okay.
All right?
That sounds fair.
Okay. About 2 weeks ago, Ella and I both started feeling sick.
Okay.
And with her, it was a sore throat. With me, it was a sinus headache. That's how things usually start with me. And so from that point, it evolved to all the smorgasbord of lovely things that you can get when you have a virus. And there are a lot of viruses going around in Florida. And some doctors are saying there's as many as 100 different ones. It's not COVID, but it's COVID's first cousin as far as I'm concerned. But we got the whole gamut of all the lovelies, the upper respiratory, the intestinal, the cough, the sneezing, all the stuff that goes along with it. But the big problem for me, and it was the same thing when I had COVID, was energy. Yeah. Energy level just bottoms out, So lots of sleeping, lots of fluids, lots of over-the-counter. Well, Mucinex has been my friend. Oh, yeah. That thing works really good it worked for both of us. So anyway, we are on the mend. But the sad part about all of this is about the time that we started doing our little thing here, my son, his wife, and my granddaughter had planned about a 10-day vacation trip to Florida. And they've been down here the whole time. In fact, my granddaughter's been a little under the weather, too, off and on. So we haven't gotten to visit with them because we don't want to infect her. Her what are we saying, immunity or whatever, resistance is low. So now we've had to plan a whole new trip. So I think Ella and I are going to go to Chicago and take in a Cubs game and do some things like that. So it's just been a crazy week. And
that sounds like a good alternative, though. You can't turn down a baseball game.
Oh, that's right. So anyway, but we're on the mend. We're coming right along. There was no way I could have podcast the last couple of weeks, and it was good we had those in the can. The one with down at the West Virginia Plot Sectional, and then the one with Troy Smith. So those were great. And then this week, as we're recording this, we're running a replay of the J.R. Gray episode, which was a real strong episode for us back when it aired a couple of years ago. Of course, J.R.'s Rackham Willie dog has been a phenomenal stud dog, and a pup out of him just won the PKC National Championship.
Yeah, isn't that fantastic?
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. The good ones, the old saying, the cream comes to the top, and every once in a while in life one comes along, like a Willie, or maybe a Frogger, or a Lipper, or a Sackett Junior, or whatever you want, a bone collector, and all these other breeds have their superstars too, I'm sure. But anyway, so that's what we did. We running the J.R. Gray episode as you and I are recording, and it's doing real well. So we're finally getting this thing back in step. You have been assisting your lovely wife with this new baby girl. Tell us about her.
Oh yeah, well, as a lot of people already know, my wife and I, we just welcomed a new baby girl into the family. Her name is Blair Michelle, and the Michelle her middle name Michelle comes from her grandmother, which is my wife's mother, and she was born on April 24th. And she was a whopper. She was about she was a little over 8 pounds. She was a whopper. So she's just kind of blended seamlessly into our family, and
awesome.
And my oldest daughter Eliana loves her to death, and they're both letting mom and dad get a little bit of sleep at night. So we're doing pretty good, all things considered, I'd say.
That's good. That's good. Well, no doubt it's cut back a little bit on your hunting time, I'm sure, for the last few weeks. How old is she now?
Oh,
is she a month old yet?
Not quite. Yeah. She won't be 4 days. In 4 days, she'll be a month old. But I'll tell you what, Steve, I actually got a lot of hunting done kind of immediately after she was born there. I hate to admit that, but I get this fancy thing at work called paternity leave. So I got a whole 2 weeks off of work, and I took some supplemental vacation time on top of that. And man, I'll tell you what, me and my little plot dog, we just put our nose to the grindstone.
That's right.
Yeah, and we did.
Well, you had a little scare with her though. Here.
Yeah. So
a week ago or last week or something.
Yeah. She. I was taking the daughter out to. Walk the dogs around in the woods for a little bit. Usually we go tree some squirrels and stuff like that just for fun. And unfortunately, I think that big old black bear that lives close by my neighborhood, I think it was out for a stroll, and we ran into him again.
Uh-oh.
So we had it sounds like we had a pretty nice bear chase. I never saw the bear. All I heard was the interaction between it and the dogs, and then my little elk hound, she come back, and old Goldie, she must have stayed right on him because she took him, buddy. I think she covered probably I'd say a modest 3 miles by the time everything was said and done. So
yeah, no doubt she was running that bear.
Yeah, I would think so. He bounced, or he crossed same road twice. He went down and bounced. He went through some real thick stuff, bounced off a river, come back up, and was heading back towards home or his den or whatever by the time she was caught by my neighbor. And I think at that point she kind of had given up the ghost on trying to catch him. So.
Well, they understand after a point,
Yeah.
I think, and that was my dad's first experience with plots, back been 70 years or better now. Was on a coon hunt when they got after a bear accidentally.
Oh boy!
He got to hear them run that bear, swim a river, and catch that bear and fight the bear, and then the howling snowstorm came up, and they lost the dogs. No tracking collars or whatever, but that was my dad's start. He never forgot that. He said, "I want some dogs like that," So
wow,
that's why he got into them, but. Well, yeah, that's always a good thing to get them back. Were you getting GPS feedback on her the whole time?
No. Actually, the only way that I know what she had done was I had to do it primitively, and I had to do it all by following behind her and keeping an ear out for her. There were several times I lost her as far as being able to hear her. She was pretty well out of range, and the topography was not in my favor. And obviously I had some restraints as far as, lands I could enter into to pursue her and stuff like that. But I was able to keep a pretty good bead on her, and I did find a bear track down in the ravine behind the house there, kind of in the same trajectory as what she was taking it. So I'm pretty confident that she was running that bear. The only thing that surprised me was that bear didn't want a tree. And I don't know if it was just because of her being a singular dog running her, or maybe it was just a little bit too big to climb. I don't know, but that was kind of interesting. He never once sounded like he was going to try to go up anywhere. But maybe you'd have more insight in on that as what I would.
Well, the only thing I could add there is maybe the neighborhood dogs or dogs around have been harassing it a little. He's getting a little more used to dog barking at him,
Yeah.
I know in certain areas in West Virginia in the latter years that my dad hunted, as people are wont to do in rural areas, sometimes they dump their garbage and trash out, in the woods. I never understood that. I guess, I don't know if they're too cheap to buy the pickup service or what, but anyway, the bears, if there's any garbage in there, any food value, they're going to get into it. And this one area they hunted, the people did that. They dumped the trash quite often. The bears, would go in those dumps. In fact, up in Michigan, my friend that lived in Ontonagon up on Lake Superior told me when he was a kid in high school, that they'd go out to the dump and see the bears. That was an attraction.
Oh, my gosh.
They had a city dump, a landfill type thing. So anyway, that could be it. Somebody they're probably getting acclimated, to the.
Well, to that humans. Point, so Goldie has a little bit of experience, running and treeing bears. This would be the second bear that she's messed with in her life. But so the bear, I'm assuming that the bear that she treed, the first bear that she treed, which would have been. It would have been right after my daughter Eliana was born, I believe. We had a situation where, when you have a baby at the hospital, they give you one of those cakes. They give you, at least the hospital we were at, they give you a little cake to celebrate their birthday.
Oh, all right.
And you bring it home with you, and the idea is you put it in the freezer, and then you can use it, whenever you want to use it up. Well. We had, we got the cake out and defrosted it or whatever, and we had a couple pieces or whatever. Well, we had a majority of it left, unfortunately, and we ended up putting it in the trash. Well, the bear came by our house, and he picked that individual garbage bag out of the trash can, and and with surgical precision, that bear opened up that bag, and he reached in there, and he pulled that cake out.
Hey, boo-boo.
Yeah, and sat there and ate that cake, and he left everything else intact. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it.
It was a picnic basket.
Yeah. You ain't kidding there.
Yeah, boy, they're smart. And and they'll just take the door right off your house if they want to come in,
So would you say that a bear or a raccoon is smarter? If you had to pick one.
I would say the raccoon's probably smarter, craftier, for sure.
Okay.
I think a bear more or less just relies on its strength. If you bear hunt very much, you'll see a bear will go up through the roughest, most difficult place to get up over a rock wall or a cliff, or he'll go right through a treetop instead of going around it.
Yeah.
I think he just knows he's big and strong, and it just says, I'd rather go through the wall than over it or around it.
Yeah.
A coon, on the other hand, can be pretty smart. In fact, people who have had raccoons as house pets talk about what a pain they are because they're into everything. They're very smart about getting into whatever they want. So I think I would have to say, I have never particularly noticed raccoons tapping trees and going back on their backtrack like a bobcat and doing all the things that the old-time coon hunters used to say that raccoons do. Now, I got books up here on the shelf that talk about coons tapping trees and how they'll climb up on a tree and listen to the dogs on their trail and then jump off and all that. I have not personally witnessed that. I know that coons will go up a tree and come back down the tree, but I always thought they were feeding more. Now, some of the old timers maybe in the listening audience will take me to task on this, and I welcome them to do that. But I've never been a real big proponent of the fact that raccoon's out there, when he hears a dog bark, he sets out all the kind of ways that he can fool a dog, before he goes up a tree.
I kind of wonder, too, how much credit the raccoon takes for being a wily critter from, say, the fox. From the gray fox and the red fox, simply because I think that a lot of the old-time coon hunters had a lot of familiarity with hunting foxes more than we would today with dogs. So I've been on enough fox chases to know that foxes they're crazy. I mean, they'll double back on themselves. They'll jump up and jump off the side of a tree, and you get into gray foxes and they start climbing and I think that the raccoon was kind of guilty by association in a lot of regards there, just because of their proximity to each other and the people that hunted them.
Well, that's true, and we all know if we've hunted very long, you'll occasionally hit that coon that's hard to tree. My voice is going to be a trouble today, Corey. I know that, but we're going to try to get through this. But yeah, they will. They'll have little routes that they take. My buddy Nubbin down in Alabama, they quite frequently have dogs hang up on the creek where the coon has climbed a leaning tree that goes out across the creek and come down on the other side and gone on. And if the dog doesn't have the experience to, go ahead and swim that creek and try to pick it up on the other side. But a lot of that stuff is just in an animal's natural desire to get away, I think.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with you there. Now, Steve, you brought, I'm not trying to change subjects here, but you've been talking about this hellacious cold that you've got going on and all this junk you've been dealing with. So to me, it sounds like you've caught the fever, and that reminds me, how's Fever doing?
The Feeve has been a happy boy lately because he's been entertaining. I guess one might say reaping the fruits of his labors out there in the night hunts. Just in the last week or so, he had a couple ladies come to see him. So Fever, I guess, is doing really well right now, and he's looking good too. If I think we're going to talk a little bit, we said that we would talk a little bit about stud dogs. And you always wonder about a dog, especially a young dog. Fever's still a young dog. He's just 2.5 years old. In fact, I think in April was his 6 months birthday, so he'll be 3 in October. You always wonder if when you start to naturally breed a dog, especially naturally, is it going to affect them? Is it going to mess their minds up, so to speak? And I've certainly seen dogs that it did, but apparently that's not a problem right now with fever. In fact, the way these appointments came in, Mother Nature does what she wants when she wants. And these two females came in just about at the same time. So over the course of a weekend, Friday through Sunday, there were two that we had to cover there. And we're real pleased with these females, the way they looked and the way their owners are talking about them. And also, hopefully, there'll be some little fevers running around here by about the 20th of July or so.
Well, but, for all the plot aficionados out there, and for my own curiosity, let's talk specifics about these females. Not just so much as like what's the breeding behind them, or what kind of dogs are they? Are they coon dogs? Are they bear dogs? Are they combo dogs? What are we looking at?
Well, I think the one that came up from down in Brunswick County, North Carolina, is going to be probably pretty much 100% coon dog.
Okay.
She's got a really nice pedigree. She's out of the Moses boys down there, Pretty Boy Poacher dog.
Okay.
And she shows a lot of redwood breeding and a lot of Bayou Jake breeding, which can kind of be one and the same depending on which way they're bred. But he started hunting her in the night hunts very lightly, and I think she got a cast wind already. But she's a real nice tree dog from the videos and all, and so we were excited to get that one. And then the other one comes from a longtime coon hunter in South Carolina that most everybody knows down that part of the country, especially around Grand American and so forth. And that's John Sapier. Excuse me. And he brought a female up, and I think, in fact, it looks like it's a poacher kind of thing. Well, both these females. He sent me an email here. Excuse me just a minute. This kind of reads like a who's who of some of the fairly well-known plot dogs. If I read down through these, and just since we're talking about stud dogs, this might be of interest to somebody.
Yeah.
There's Moses's Rugged Ridge Poacher, dual grand champion plot Shirk Slinging Mud.
Mm-hmm.
There's I don't know this Shirk's Tennessee Sizzling Zeke, Cody and Smith's Carolina Scout. Now I think Scout was the sire of the Maximus dog of Chris Rochester's, if I'm not mistaken. Flatland Rockin' Ruby, Cody's Good News Sweet Sue. That's Robbie and perhaps Bobby Cody down around Marietta, South Carolina, that has those dogs. And then here's a Grand Champion Pride's JR and Burnett's Rooster.
Yeah,
Hager's Mingo Redwood Solid Oak. He's a Okie bred dog that I know very well. And Hall's Late Night Magic, a female that I've hunted with. And Harold's Penny.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I didn't know all the dogs there in that pedigree, being fairly new to plot bloodlines myself, but a few of those dogs I do know and have personal experience with myself. And I'll tell you what, some of them were very, very not not only were they good reproducers, but they were very consistent cast winners. I think about Burnett's Rooster specifically. Burnett's Rooster was generally at a lot of major events, and he was the kind of dog that he might not always get into the money or the trophies or whatever, but you can bet he'd still be sitting there with a cast win, and he was a real unit for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, John Sapier. When he sent me the pedigree on this female, he said, she has water race points with a grand final line and tree. She has field trial points also. He says, somebody kept bringing a new plot to Spartanburg Coonhurst Association and taking my money. Of course, he was referring to Mark coming up there with fever, I guess. But no, we're anybody that has. Let's break this down, Corey. It's
okay.
kind of a chicken and the egg thing, or the egg. When we set out to make a Grand Night champion with a dog, what's the goal? What would you say the general goal is for someone that sets out to do that? And it could be there's no right answer. It could be a lot of different things. What comes to mind for you?
Well, I guess for me, it's a lot about validity. So we want to not necessarily impose to others that our dog is of good quality. We just want to emphasize it. So the title helps do that in many people's minds. It's almost like a guarantee to a certain extent that this dog is very capable at what he does. So that's really the reason why a lot of us go about doing that. And the reason that we want to give credence to this dog is obviously we want to try to produce puppies out of this dog.
Well, I hear Louie, the black and tan, in the background. I guess he wanted on the podcast. Well, I used to hear the stories, and we all have heard them for years. Cheap night champions. Dogs that earn a night champion title, but they're not coon dogs, and they're not worthy of the title coon dog. And I think that with the caliber of dogs that we have and the way that we have things structured nowadays, a dog has to get out there and prove, and especially with these independent dogs, they pretty much have to prove that they can get out and tree a coon on their own to get that cast win. It's rare to look at a scorecard nowadays and see dogs stacked up on the same tree. You may see the strike, of course they got to be struck as they open, and usually that first strike of the night is the only one, as the dogs are, fed back in after they've treed to themselves. So I think most of the dogs today are proving that they can tree a coon by themselves.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And so that kind of takes that part away from it. I always thought that if a dog went out and made Grand Night champion, and here again, this is not about, we use Old Fever as an example here because he's convenient, but this is not a stud ad. This podcast does not exist to promote that dog.
Yeah, if I had a male dog, we'd be talking about him. Trust me.
That's right. That's right. And I would, with my blessing, really,
Yeah.
because I've always been a little self-conscious about that. But anyway, you know, to look at a dog that earns the Grand Night Champion title means that he has won 13 casts in UKC competition. You know, he's won 5 hunting against registered or non-title dogs, and he's earned 8 more hunting against champion or above dogs. So I think they've pretty well proven themselves in that regard. But as far as the owner, what is the goal for a guy to make a Grand Night Champion? Well, part of it, excuse me again here, part of it is the fun of the competition. You know, loading your dog up on a Friday night and driving into a coon club, pulling into the driveway and seeing all the guys looking around. Look who's here? What's he hauling? You know, and that's all part of it. And certainly it always was an enjoyable part for me. You know, I didn't go there with the dog that I knew I was going to lose. I would have just stayed home, you know. I think we all feel like that we've got a chance to win or we wouldn't be there, you know. So there's the fun of competition ranks up there real high, I think. But then once you start doing some winning, then those goals come into view. You know, that night champion and then that Grand Night Champion or a Grand Night 2 or 3 or 4. And now they've got it all the way up to Hall of Fame. So, you know, that's part of it there, the goal of achieving there. But then for some of us, the goal is to prove this dog's ability and then to be honest about it and say, I really would like to improve the breed. I really would like to put some pups on the ground that would kick things up a notch or two for my breed. And everybody's hopeful of that. We're hopeful that Fever will do that. At this point, we have no way of knowing, you know. So all we can hope for, and any stud dog owner can hope for, is that good females will be brought to the stud dog, you know. And I'm encouraged as I look at the pedigrees on these 2 females that came in last week, because there are a lot of good dogs there. And we could have a long session on breeding and talk about family breeding and phenotype and genotype and all of these different things. And get real down deep in the weeds, but we don't want to do that on this podcast.
We're more like porch philosophers.
That's right. We're sitting on the front porch.
Yeah,
you know, we put the wood stove away for the summer.
Oh yeah, we don't want a wood stove right now. Jeez, especially where you're at.
Maybe for the gnats.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because whenever you have a good dog, a dog that you're willing to take to town and promote, you know, there's essentially 2 camps that you exist in, and it really depends on whether you're hunting a male or a female. You know, when you hunt a male dog, it's all in hopes of attracting females, but when you're on the opposite side of the equation, you know, you're trying to just give your dog a little credibility so that these stud dog owners are willing to breed your female, and essentially you're trying to achieve the same thing. But you know, I had an old, very wise man tell me one time, and I've always been a female guy myself, and that's kind of why I've stayed in that camp. But very wise man told me one time, you know, if you got a good female, you own every stud dog in the country. And True. I'll tell you what, that has really held water. I'll tell you that much.
Well, my friend Randy Smith, who I mention quite often, you know, has illustrated that very well.
Yes. Very much.
And he's taken the initiative to go out and to buy semen from some of these great stud dogs of recent history. Well, take for instance Bone Collector, Trackman, and dogs like that. So I agree with your friend's assessment there about the females for sure. Well, I think any stud dog owner, if he purposes in his heart to advertise a dog at stud, certainly it's not going to expect or receive the amount of attention that the great stud dogs of the past did.
Sure.
I've talked to guys like Mac McAllister, who owned Lipper, bought him and owned him in his final years. And the Flat Rock Coma dog, and the dog that the other one, Mac Stylish Banjo or something. I can't remember the name of the dog right now. It'll come to me. But anyway, Mac, used to tell me the horror stories of the calls in the middle of the night, the people showing up, bringing a family with them, coming in, camping out on the living room floor, all of these kind of things. Coon hunters have not always been the most, how can I say, thoughtful or most considerate sometimes when it's time. They think that everybody, because they're out there at 3 o'clock in the morning, everybody else is too, So anyway, running a stud dog can be a pain in the butt, even at best sometimes. And, Mark thoroughly enjoyed having John and I can't think of the young man's name right now. I'll think of it in just a second, the young man that came up from North Carolina. But anyway, Clemens was his last name. But, you can get the rude individual. You can get the individual that calls you at dinner time and won't accept the fact that, hey, can I call you back? That just keeps on talking, endlessly. And it's always amazed me. I get phone calls and I would say, well, you've caught me in an extremely bad time right now, but I'd like to talk to you. We need to finish this conversation. And then they just go right on around that and right on with whatever they called about. And it's just like, what part of no don't you understand? But that comes with it. When you put a dog out there at public stud and say, okay, he's available, then you're going to get the guy that calls up and you've got a Grand Night champion dog, maybe a dog that's won a world title. Yeah. Or a national championship, and the guy starts asking you, will he tree a coon? Will he, will he open a track? Will he do this? Will he do that? And some of the questions are quite, they seem ridiculous, but in some cases they're honest.
Yeah.
Some cases a guy's calling up and he doesn't know these things and he wants to know, And, because I've been in that public eye in coon hunting for many years, I still get a lot of calls like that from people that just, want to talk about various facets of the coon hunting sport.
Yeah, I think back in the day that there was a little bit more faith in the system as far as taking a dog and finishing it to night champion or grand night champion and then advertising it at stud. A lot of the guys that would bring their females to these kinds of dogs, they trusted in the system and that meant something very deep and profound to them, that they were willing to bring their dogs to these titled their females to these titled male dogs to breed. Nowadays, I think there's just a lot of scrutiny behind everything, and people feel like they need to deep dive a little bit more. They need to lay hands on the dog. They need to have firsthand experience hunting with the dog. And so stud dogs, they kind of have that added burden on them where not only do they need to earn the degrees and titles that everyone anticipates that they should have, they also need to prove themselves after the fact. They need to prove themselves night after night after night to so many different people. And at the end of the day, it's just a matter of how much are you willing, how flexible are you willing to be to get your dog bred, as far as the stud owner.
Yeah, and the internet has made things a lot simpler as far as advertising. I was someone mentioned the other day that he was going to write an ad about a plot dog and make it sound like a Walker ad of years ago. And I told him, I said, well, go ahead and do that. Paper will hold still for anything, But the implication was, from me, was that, some point in time you're going to have to back up the hype,
Mm-hmm.
It used to be that a dog could simply win the world hunt, and that's all the credentials it needed.
Mm-hmm.
If you win a world hunt in the fall, then the world's going to beat your door down come, March and April.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not quite that way now. The hunters, have their own thoughts about what they want in a dog, and I think they are more educated about these dogs. But certainly, winning is still going to be the standard, I think, that most people are going to look to when they pick a stud dog for their dog. Now, there's going to be a few conscientious breeders that really nerd out when it comes to pedigrees, and they really get into them, and they're really into family breeding and the ins and outs of inbreeding and line breeding and all these things. But the majority of the guys out there, when they've got a female, they think that they like well enough that they want a puppy out of that female. Or they may have the idea of just selling a litter of pups and seeing how much money they can make on them. They're going to be in for a rude awakening on that, because raising puppies is expensive. Any way you do it, it's expensive.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
But there are those, I think, that want to just like raising puppies. And they, when I had a stud dog, I called him Roper. I was back in my UKC days and all. I bred several of the better plot females in the country to Roper that year. But by far, most of my calls came from people wanting pups. I would say, well, don't you have a female to breed and you can have a whole litter of pups? And they said, no, we don't. I don't have one, and I don't know where there is one. So if you've got a pup for sale, I'll buy a pup. And it was like Darren Allgood. He was a well-known plot man for several years, and then he got into the cur dogs and has now kind of gone back to the plot dog again. And he right away contacted me and said he wanted to know who this boy was down in North Carolina, so he could contact him about booking a puppy out of his dog, which I thought that was pretty cool. Well, see, that would have never happened in the old days. You'd have had to wait for the magazine to come out. The gentleman that I've been talking about and not mention his name is Lucas Clemens. And he's a cousin to a fellow named Jamie Stone. Now, a lot of people down on the coastal North Carolina and South Carolina will remember Jamie back in his day when he was a real competition hunter. And I believe he won the Grand American at least once. And so Lucas is Jamie's cousin. But anyway, I'm chasing rabbits there, Corey. Reel me back in. But what we're talking about, about the pros and cons of running a stud dog. Everybody thinks about, well, I can get money for breeding my dog. And that's good. Money is good. And that's all they think about. What comes to mind with you when it comes to the prospect of offering a dog for stud?
Well, I can say honestly that I only ever really did it once, and I did it with a red bone male that I owned in partnership with my good friend Zach Crassa. Zach had owned the dog, and I had ended up hunting him for him for an extended amount of time, and we kind of grew a partnership, out of that. And I think that my expectations were a little high, even in the red bone sphere of the coonhound world. We did get quite a few females, local females that came and bred to this dog that we had. We called him Jake. It was locked and loaded Jake. And Jake had a good reputation. He came from a well-known breeder. He came from a well-known cross, and he had several litter mates that were titled as well. And I had expectations that we were going to get him on the current reproducers list with UKC, and we were really working to do that. But I don't know that those expectations were super realistic. I mean, he did. I think he ended up producing probably right around 35 puppies or something to that extent. So he had bred 4 or 5 females to do that, and I had a lot more conversations about breeding to him than I ever had females come and breed to him. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe text messaging and so forth has cut into that somewhat.
Sure.
Because those long phone conversations, long distance, as we used to say. Of course, every call's across the room nowadays, no matter where you are. But back in the day, those have pretty much been eliminated by the online conversations and text messages and messenger messages and so forth. But I think most people that have the expectation of running a dog at stud and breeding a lot of females are probably start out a little bit on the naive side. Now, if you're a well-known hunter, you've been paid your dues over the years, down through the years, and you come up with a nice dog, people are going to remember your reputation, and they're going to be drawn to that dog just because of the association of your name with that dog's name. But if you're out there and you've got a nice young dog and you go out there and you do what the Kennel Club tells you need to do to make that dog a Grand Night champion or a PKC Silver champion, or win, a placement that maybe make the top all Grand 16 at Autumn Oaks, or whatever the case may be. Don't expect the world to beat your door down just because you did that,
Yeah. Well, one point I'll make too that I think that a lot of people don't realize is a stud dog is never famous until he's dead. And that's just my personal biased opinion.
The deader, the better.
That is so accurate. I think it plays into how we treat our own individual dogs too. We kind of take for granted that they're there and that they are what they are. And I see this happen a lot with females where guys don't want to breed them young. They don't want to breed them when they're in the peak fertility of their life, because they're competition hunting them or promoting them or whatever. But then all of a sudden that dog dies and they're like, man, I was so stupid not to breed that dog. I should have, bred her more, or I should have bred him more. And there's always that regret at the tail end of a dog's life for their owners because of that. And I'll tell you what, these dogs that get bred at stud, man, you could name your price after that dog's dead. And we see that play out. If TrackMan semen came up for sale right now, you could almost name your price on it. Same with Booger Hollow Mojo or Bone Collector, just to name a few recent examples. Every now and then we see Spring Creek Rock semen come up for sale, or puppies out of Lipper, or some crazy stuff happens, and people really eat into that because the dog's dead. You can't do anything more with it.
Oh, yeah. Well, that supply and demand, will always drive a market no matter what it is. And, yeah, and so many hunters fall into that trap. My father did that with our dogs down through the years that, he hunted them and he didn't want to take them out of the pack, out of the bear pack or whatever, and put them up for the period of time it'd take to raise a litter of puppies. Again, I don't, he's just such a darn good example that I speak about Randy Smith a lot, but he has a program and that would work for anybody that's willing to pay their dues. And that is, breed the dogs, selectively breed them, do your homework. When you get the good ones, then hunt those dogs. Put the titles on them. Put them into some bigger events or whatever. And then when that phase is kind of leveled off, then start to breed those dogs while they're still young enough, to produce litters. Mm-hmm. And it's a plan that works. It works very well for him, and it will work for anybody that's willing to pay their dues. But you got to remember, Randy started back when he was a teenager, and Randy, I think, is 50 now, and so it's not, and that's another point we can make, Corey, here, that none of this stuff involving coonhounds is going to be instant gratification.
Yeah.
Occasionally you're going to get a dog that's just a big winner. Boom, boom, boom. Can't seem to lose.
Right.
But those are so few and far between. Thoughts?
One thought that eats away at me when we talk about this kind of stuff, dead dogs in particular, is, I almost think it's a little unprogressive for us to do that sort of thing, because not only I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this. It puts a lot of burden on these young dogs that are being promoted at stud to outcompete these dead dogs on top of the well-established stud dogs that are still alive. And I think that it just kind of, it's like a snake eating its own tail. Nobody wants to breed to the young unproven dogs, but then when they die down the road, all of a sudden everybody wants to breed to them. Mm-hmm. And you could have just taken the chance and bred to that dog when he was alive, and it's like, it's a vicious cycle, because TrackMan dies, and when TrackMan was alive, X and X dogs didn't get any attention. TrackMan dies, and now they're still not getting attention because TrackMan's dead, but there's semen out there off of him. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't understand that system. I have a pretty hard rule that if I'm going to breed my female, I'm going to breed it to a dog that's alive, and that's really that. I mean, besides the qualities that I look for in a stud dog, that's really the only other rule that I have, is that dog has to be alive.
Well, we've often said that you don't get the dog that you breed to. you get what that dog produces.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, I've been quick to encourage people to breed to our dog, Sire, because he's alive and being bred and all, And he's the one that produced our dog, And it yet remains to be seen what Fever's going to produce.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that aspect right there. But I would not personally want to breed to a dog that I had not hunted with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's getting to be more difficult for me all the time, being where I am geographically and where, age is a factor. But I always wanted to see the dogs go. Back in the days when I bred to Everett Weems stud dogs, I wanted to go and see them go, and I hunted with many of his dogs, And I have always been a proponent of family breeding because I believe it creates the predictability that a breeder wants in his puppies. To be able to say, I know if I breed this way, now they may not all be world beaters. Mm-hmm. They may not be any good at all, but they're going to act this way. They're going to look this way. They're going to have this kind of mouth. And it increases the predictability of what the outcome is going to be,
Yeah.
And so that was always very important to me in breeding dogs. And but if you are out there and you have a desire to breed your own dogs, I know my buddy Keston Jesse, he thinks about this a lot down the road. He doesn't think so much about the competition. He thinks more about the dogs that he wants to raise and train that would be the mother of the puppies that he wants to raise out of the dog he has. Mm-hmm. And I applaud him for that. That's very noble. But anyway, if you are looking to be a stud dog owner, you need to examine your motives before you ever start. And you need to say, why am I doing this? Why would I want to do this?
Yeah.
Is it an ego trip that I want? I want to be able to say, hey guys, did you see my ad last month in Full Cry magazine? Well, see, that aspect is not there as much as it used to be. But guys are posting their ads on the internet and like what's thoughts?
Well, you got to build off of your point, Steve. You have to be willing to take what the community that you're of your breed. You have to be willing to take what their opinion is on your dog at some point in time. It's perfectly fine to put your dog up for stud. And I would encourage anybody that if they think they have a nice dog, put them up for stud. But at some point in time, you're going to have to take a hard look in the mirror, and you're going to have to be realistic with yourself about, okay, we are getting females bred. People like them. He's given good positive attributes to these pups, or hey, nobody's breeding to them. And he might be detracting from the attention that other male dogs in the breed get. And that can be kind of a hard pill to swallow. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is, rather than being critical, is I think that everybody needs to be realistic with themselves about not only what to expect, but what that outcome is that they come to from the starting point of their expectations, if that makes sense.
It does. And, it's been said that, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, is insanity.
Yeah.
And there comes a point with these dogs that you have to realize, for all my wishing and hoping and all our hard work and the fact that the dog is really a nice dog and he's got a lot of nice titles, he's just not producing. We bred him to enough females to know that some of those females, should have been able to carry at least their weight in this proposition.
Well, and it doesn't take 100 females to figure that out either.
No, not at all. And so, anyway, I encourage you, like you said, Corey, encourage listeners, if you have a nice dog, and I'm a purebred guy. I want them to look good. I want them to meet the breed standard. I want the whole package. I don't know why people are so quick to want to settle for less, And I'm going to get on a stump here, and they're going to shoot me off of it. So you bury me.
All right,
this idea that we're going to improve the breed by going out and picking a dog from another breed to breed to. Baloney. Go find a dog within your breed, and work within, color within the lines, That's just me, and half my audience may vehemently disagree. I like that word better.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'll give our viewers an illustration. So listeners, yeah, our listeners. Thanks for keeping me straight, Steve.
Well, we're looking at each other here as we're talking, so that's an easy mistake to make. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'll give you an example, Steve. So, I used to be really involved in the red bone breed, and I was as pro red bone as anybody could get. And I honestly loved, a lot of the dogs that I worked with, and I was working really hard towards having, some semblance of a breeding program at a pretty young age. The biggest hang up for me was the amount of people that were wanting to bring the Walker influence into our breed and just advertently breed 2 Treeing Walker Coonhounds to try to improve the red bone coonhound breed. And that was something I really struggled with, and something that, as coming from the perspective of a kid that was raised kind of as a purist, somebody that you don't crossbreed dogs, you don't do this, you don't do that. I had to do a lot of learning about when it's appropriate to do outcrosses like that and when it's not. And my conclusion was, if I wanted to hunt a Treeing Walker Coonhound, I would just go hunt a Treeing Walker Coonhound. But I was hunting red bone coonhounds. And if we weren't going to promote a red bone coonhound, then I wasn't going to promote a red bone coonhound. I was going to go promote a Treeing Walker Coonhound.
Exactly.
And
I'm in your camp, brother. Preach.
Now I wouldn't necessarily agree with the idea that you can't pick up desirable attributes from another breed, but you have to have I don't think that that's a decision that one person can make on their own and expect to influence their breed. That has to be a decision that's made by a breed organization, by a registry. There has to be a lot of benefits to it, including health and longevity and all that kind of stuff. So I think that a lot of us don't have the understanding that it takes to make those kinds of decisions. And I am certainly not going to admit that I am one of those people. And I am just going to stick with what I know. That's my, the color of the dog at the end of my lead is what I'm going to be hunting. So,
yeah. Well, I'm a purebred guy. Of course, I worked with the registries all those years, and one would expect me to be so. I had a family that was very much involved in a breed, and we stuck to the standards, and we bred according to the papers and all those years. So there again, I would be expected to have my views. Not everybody has to share my views. And because you don't share my views does not mean that your views are wrong. But my views are that, as you said, Corey, if you want a plot dog, hunt a plot dog, breed within the plot breed, find the better, do your homework, go out there and find and improve within the breed. If you want a walker dog, then there's lots of those to choose from, or any of the other breeds. But okay, well, we pretty well covered the subject of stud dogs, except for one thing that I wanted to cover. And this discussion could go on forever. I mean, talking about stud dogs and is virtually limitless.
That's the fun thing about certain aspects of our sport, like stud dogs, is there's a lot of people that have hard opinions on the subject. And Steve and I, we have our hard opinions. We have our things that we disagree with and that we agree on. But at the end of the day, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and that's what makes this world so wonderful that we live in.
That's right. And I have if anyone calls me and I don't pick up the phone, and you are fortunate enough to get my voicemail, you'll hear my voice, my creaky old voice, sitting on a swing in the cabin in North Carolina with the trout stream in the background and the birds singing, and me saying that you've reached the voicemail of Steve Fielder, where opinions are freely given and advice is rarely taken. If you feel lucky, leave me a message. These are my opinions and your opinions, Corey, and they are nothing more than our opinions. So if you're out there and you're listening to us and you don't agree and you're beating on the dash of your truck as you hear us talking about crossbreeding or whatever, don't do that, man. These are our opinions. You have yours, and hopefully we'll get to sit down on the front porch with you sometime and get to hear yours.
As my buddy used to say, my opinion doesn't make me right, but it doesn't make you right either.
That's right. Well, listen, I want to talk to you about this stud dog auction that you've got going on.
Oh, my Lord.
I think that's a good deal. I think it's a great idea. I don't know. It's probably a bigger job than you thought it would be, maybe.
Yeah.
Tell us about it. What is it? What's it going for? Why'd you do it?
Well,
how's it going?
I guess before I get into all the details with that, I'm going to ask you a trivia question. And I'm simply asking you this because of your age. I assume that you may know the answer to this question, but everybody's heard of a stud dog auction. I don't think there are very many people who haven't. Who came up with the idea of a stud dog auction? I think that's a brilliant idea.
Well, basically, if you want to break it down, let me do it or you can do it, Corey. But a stud dog auction is where the owners of these stud dogs agree to donate a stud fee on their stud dog to some good cause. Usually it's a charity. It might be to benefit a national association. It could be for any reason. But the promoters, go about and contact these stud dog owners and say, okay, if you came to Mark and me, or maybe we volunteered, I don't remember. But anyway, you say, okay, you've got a stud dog. Would you put him in the auction? And would you provide a stud fee on that dog to the highest bidder? And which we agreed to do. And we realized with a plot dog, we're probably not going to get the big bucks. But the money all goes to whatever the charity or the purpose of the auction is. And it's a good way. It's a great way for someone to get a heck of a deal on a stud fee. If you look at the way these stud fees are going nowadays on these dogs, $800 is fairly common, $1,000 and up. And if you can slide in there with a $300 or $400 bid or a $500 bid or something on an $800 stud fee, man, that's a good deal.
Yeah.
So I don't know who started them, but they've been around an awful long time, and they were usually associated with some kind of charity event.
Yeah. So what Steve's alluding to is my personal coon hunters club that I belong to, the Mercer County Coon Hunters Association, is working in partnership with a charity called Wags for Kids, and the idea here is we're going to be putting on a benefit event over the July 4th weekend, specifically July 6th. And this event is going to help raise funds for a young man to purchase his very first service animal. This is obviously a young man with special needs. And the Wags for Kids program, which is Working Animals Giving Service for Kids Incorporated, they're a federal charity that holds fundraisers and participates in events throughout the year to help these kids raise money to purchase the service dogs that they actually train. And it's a really cool organization that was just recently brought to my attention. I didn't know anything about Wags for Kids prior to this year, but there is a coon hunter in our local area here named Dwayne LaRouche. And Dwayne had a son participate in this program, and they put on a fundraising dinner to help raise the money necessary to purchase a service animal through the Wags for Kids program. And for our listeners out there that may want this quantified for them, a service animal has to go through a lot of rigorous training in order to be properly certified, especially when they're going to be working with young children. And the cost of a service dog is equal to or greater than the price of the best coon dogs that you could imagine purchasing. You could be talking, a cost to these families that this child belongs to of $10,000 or more. So obviously, being that we're going to be holding this benefit event, we're really pulling out all the stops to make it bigger and better than any benefit event we've ever put on before. So in tandem with this July 6th UKC benefit event that we're going to be holding, we are currently organizing a Wags for Kids stud dog auction where we've had quite a few stud owners donate stud services on their stud dogs to our auction, and we're currently working on getting those stud fees sold through an online auction style format. And it's going pretty good so far. Right now, as we speak, we're well over the $2,000 threshold on getting this kid some money towards his service dog. So really got to commend the coonhound community for coming together and being willing to participate in these sorts of events to help these kids in need. I think it's really great.
Well, I do too, Corey, for sure. Now, how are the listeners out there going to be able to participate in it? And you've got some top stud dogs. I know some of the biggest names in the sport on this list of stud dogs. Where do they find the list, and how do they place a bid?
Well, I'll throw the caveat out there that we wanted to ensure that this stud dog auction was something that our club members could handle. So we've limited the amount of stud dogs that are available at auction to 30. And we do have 30 individual dogs that are available. Some of the stud services are even the option between multiple dogs. So that's kind of something that's unique and worth checking out if that applies to your breed. But if somebody wants to get involved with the auction, or if they want to make a charitable donation through the stud dog auction to this young man that we're going to be holding the benefit event for, whose name is Jonathan, by the way. They can go onto Facebook and they can search Wags for Kids Stud Dog Auction. And if they find the yellow banner with the Wags for Kids logo on it, they've made it to the right place. And it's as simple as joining the Facebook group and then scrolling through the 30 different studs that we have offered and making a comment under the stud ad that they're wanting to bid on, and being the highest bidder there. So every stud dog that's offered has a $50 minimum to start. The first person to bid on that has to make a $50 bid. After that, it can go in any kind of increment that the bidder sees fit. And the stud dog auction that we're running here is going to run until June 1st, which is going to be just at the end of this week when this podcast airs. And it's going to be shutting down at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on June 1st. So we're basically running it for about 2 weeks, and that will give us about a month to prep for the July 6th event that's coming up. And then the proceeds from the stud dog auction will be combined with the proceeds that are generated at our UKC licensed benefit event. And all of those proceeds will be presented to Jonathan at the conclusion of that event.
So can you tell us a little bit about Jonathan and what he's attempting to achieve through this?
Yeah, so like I said, Jonathan we don't have a ton of information on Jonathan right at this moment, just because we are dealing with a minor here.
Sure, yeah. But basically, what is the goal for him through this?
The goal, I believe it was like approximately $9,000 he needed to fundraise to purchase a service animal. Mm-hmm. And actually, coincidentally, so the man behind this whole benefits event stud dog auction thing is a guy named John Owens, and John is a member of my local coon club. And
awesome.
And John, at one point in time, had some physical limitations and special needs as a child that people were gracious to him during that time of his life and donated to his family and whatnot. Right. So he came in and he wanted to put on this huge benefit event, and he wanted it specifically to be for this young man Jonathan that he had seen on the Wags for Kids benefit page. Well, the funny thing is about that, we started working on this benefit event, and we just knew that this kid's name was Jonathan. Well, here, while I was sequestering stud dog donations, I talked to a man... Soliciting, sequestering, whatever.
Well, sequestering mean you put them in a room, and you're not going to let them out until they...
Well, I had to do that on a couple of occasions. No, but so I spoke with a good friend of mine, Sonny Phipps from Southern Ohio, and anybody that knows
good
Sonny
man.
Knows he has the Lone Pine Louis dog that did well at Super Stakes. I think he won the freshman Super Stakes.
Yeah, we just did a podcast with Troy Smith, and Troy's Bertha female is out of Louis.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
And Biffy Sue. So,
yeah. So as I was talking to Sonny about potentially donating a stud service on Louis or the young male out of Louis that he has right now, Good Luck Huck, we figured out that this was actually Sonny's nephew that was involved with this charity, and that really sold Sonny on donating a stud fee. Obviously, he donated a stud fee at that point. But so it's really cool now because we know that we're working for someone within our own community, so to speak, or at least that has ties to our own community here in the coon hunting world. And so that just poured gasoline on the fire, So
absolutely. Well, guys, I want you to think about this now. Out there, look at that list of stud dogs. 30 dogs. You got dogs on there like, I know, what is it? The one of Kevin Cable's dog, or is it Kevin? Is it the dog Kevin sold?
Yeah, it's the dog that Kevin sold that's owned by John Burnett now.
Okay.
Yeah.
For instance, one of the money dogs there. There's a lot of good dogs in there, and you can bid on these stud fees for as little as $50. And you just go back and look at it. Somebody tops your bid and go, depends on how serious you are about wanting that. But you could save hundreds of dollars on a stud fee. And this will be, you can use this anytime on any female that you have, I assume, right?
Yeah, so each stud fee is going to be good for 1 calendar year from the time of purchase till that following date the next year.
Yeah, there you go.
And yeah, I think it's a great opportunity and honestly, it may even give people the opportunity to try out a dog that they normally wouldn't. That give some different stud dogs different attention. And
absolutely. And I don't know what the restrictions are, but my buddy Keston, he's always thinking. He says, well, if I win that stud fee, and he picked a stud dog and he wanted a stud fee out of it, he said, I would give that to somebody with the promise that I could get a pup back out of it, So, there's always ways to work those things, I guess, between. But no, that's a great thing. It's called Wags for Kids.
Yes, Wags for Kids. And I did want to make mention, we do have all 7 breeds represented in our stud list, which I thought was really cool.
Very cool.
We do, I think the Walker dogs are obviously the majority. I believe we have 10 of them specifically. Mm-hmm. But I did want to mention that we do have 3 plot hounds that we have up for auction. One of them being Fever, and all 3 of them currently have bids on them.
All right.
So that's pretty spectacular. Yeah. I think that's pretty awesome. But
you bet.
I appreciate you letting me share a little bit about that, Steve, because we're pretty on fire for getting this kid what he needs and helping his family out.
Well, that's the bottom line right there. That's the bottom line. We help somebody along the way. That is our purpose in life. Folks, it's been a great hour and 20-some minutes here with you this week. We thank you for checking in with us. The people at W Hunting Supply are going overboard with getting these podcasts out into different networks. I got a message today from Jason Doobie showing several different podcast platforms that our podcasts are being presented on, and there's a large array of podcasts now through W Hunting Supply, through their Houndcast network, and you can get them through Spotify or Apple Podcast or so many different ways now. But we do appreciate you so much listening. We appreciate our sponsors. We appreciate W Hunting Supply, especially for making this podcast possible. Corey Groover, what you say before we let the folks go?
I say that I'm actually kind of hungry. Doing all this talking has kind of made me a little peckish. So hopefully, I might not. That
must be a Pennsylvania term.
Yeah, maybe I'll go find a Philly cheesesteak or something.
Oh, that sounds good. Well, folks, thanks for putting up with this gravelly old voice. I tell you, I did make it through. And if somebody asks you, where's Groover and Fielder these days, tell them, well, they're out there chasing a stud dog. He got loose. He's chasing a bear, and they're trying to catch him. I guess you could say they're gone to the dogs.
See you, everybody.
See you, folks. Bye.